I never told anyone this before. But that morning, I felt like the world had pulled the rug out from under me. The alarm rang, harsh and unforgiving, slicing through the quiet of my small Brooklyn apartment. I rubbed my eyes, trying to shake off the fog of sleep. But the heaviness in my chest wouldn't budge. There was something in the air that day, thick, metallic, like the smell of rain just before a storm, but it wasn't the weather. It was fear. I grabbed my coffee, bitter and burnt, and walked to the office, each step echoing in the nearly empty subway station. The city was alive, buzzing with life, but I felt invisible, swallowed by its hum. People rushed past, heels clicking, distant sirens wailing, a rhythm that should have comforted me, but only made my chest tighten. I kept thinking, it's just another day, Zariah, you can handle this. Then, I saw it, the email, a single line in bold letters, and my stomach dropped like the floor had fallen out from beneath me. Your project has been reassigned. Effective immediately. My heart pounded, ears ringing in a silence louder than any siren. Malik had taken it, my work, the one I had poured months of sweat and soul into. A cold knot of betrayal coiled around my ribs. The office, usually a sea of familiar faces and casual chatter, became a battlefield. Every smile felt fake, every nod reminded me I was alone in this war. I remember pacing, my sneakers squeaking against the polished floor, the taste of cold coffee sour in my mouth. Layla's text popped up on my phone. Breathe. You got this. But her words felt distant, like someone else's life. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the cup. Let it shatter. Let my frustration spill in shards across the floor. Instead, I sat at my desk, trembling, pretending to read the next email, pretending to be fine. That afternoon, the office felt smaller, walls pressing in with judgmental eyes. Mr. Harris walked by, offering a sympathetic glance that did nothing to soothe the fire inside me. I stared out the window at the skyline, sunlight glinting off the glass towers, mocking me with its calm brilliance. How could they erase me so easily? The thought echoed relentlessly in my mind. By evening, I left the office silently, walking through streets that had suddenly become a maze of shadows. My apartment smelled faintly of lavender from the candle I had forgotten to blow out the night before. I sank onto the couch, knees to chest, letting silence swallow me. Yet, in that quiet, I felt the tiniest flicker, an ember of defiance. I didn't know it then, but that ember would grow. It would push me to rise, to fight, to reclaim not just my project, but my sense of self. As I lay there, city lights flickering through my window, I made a silent promise. This isn't the end. Not yet. I could feel the storm in me, ready to break, and for the first time, a strange thrill threaded through the fear. Something had shifted. Something was coming. That night, I couldn't sleep. The apartment felt smaller than ever, like the walls were leaning in, whispering every doubt I'd ever had. I stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks that suddenly seemed like maps to nowhere. My phone buzzed, friends checking in, reminders of meetings, but I couldn't respond. I wasn't just tired, I was furious, not polite anger, raw, shaking, clawing at your chest kind of anger. I went to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and the cold liquid slipped down my throat like reality itself, sharp and undeniable. I replayed the day. Malik smiling when Mr. Harris congratulated him. Emails flying across the screen. Betrayal still bitter in my mouth. Every tiny detail burned. My hands shook on the counter. This isn't fair. This is not how it's supposed to be. Then I did something rare. I opened my laptop and started typing. Not work emails. Not passive-aggressive notes. Not excuses, but a plan. Each sentence a hammer. Each paragraph a brick. I wrote down every weakness I could exploit. Every opportunity I had overlooked. Every small victory I could build upon. The coffee I'd abandoned that morning sat cold and forgotten while I filled page after page with strategy. It wasn't revenge. Not yet. It was survival. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge and distant sirens. My heartbeat roared in my ears. I remembered my mother's voice. Zariah. Courage isn't about not being scared. It's about moving forward anyway. I whispered it over and over, letting it sink into my chest, fueling the ember sparked that afternoon. By midnight, exhaustion hit, but I didn't stop. I mapped allies, outlined strengths, imagined every scenario where I could reclaim what was mine. I visualized walking into the office. Calm, collected, eyes steady, fear shed like a coat. The fantasy made my pulse race. The city outside wasn't a jungle, it could be my playground. Then came small victories. A call from Layla, a friend from another department, offering a tip on Malik's weak points. A reminder from my mentor about a conference I could leverage. Each spark fed the fire. My fists unclenched. My breath slowed. I wasn't powerless. Erased on paper. Yes, but not in spirit. Not in drive. Finally, I collapsed on the couch. Notebook clutched to my chest. Eyes burning from the screen. City lights flickered outside, and I could almost hear them cheering. Rise. Rise now. In that silence, I made a promise. Tomorrow, I wouldn't just show up. I would arrive like a storm, unpredictable, unstoppable, unafraid. Something had shifted that night. Fear hadn't vanished. It had mutated into determination, into clarity, into purpose. I was standing on the edge of something dangerous, exhilarating, entirely mine. And when morning came, the first step would be mine to take. I walked into the office the next morning like I was stepping onto a battlefield. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Too bright, too sharp. My sneakers clicked against the tile floor, each step echoing like a challenge. I could feel eyes on me. Some curious, some cautious, others pretending not to notice. A silent game of intimidation was in play. And I had decided. I wasn't the prey anymore. Malik was there, smirking as if nothing had changed. But I noticed cracks in his posture, a slight hesitation in his tone. A hand rubbing the back of his neck. I smiled inwardly. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was observing, learning, ready. The morning meetings were brutal. Voices clashed. Deadlines flew like thrown daggers. And I sat there, absorbing everything. Stale coffee tasted bitter and grounding. Each email ping was a bullet whizzing by. But I didn't flinch. I had rehearsed, visualized, and trained my mind for this exact moment. Every detail from the night before became ammunition. By mid-morning, I found my opening. A tiny oversight in a report, one that could have been ignored, became my leverage. I highlighted it calmly, almost casually. The room shifted. Tension buzzed like static electricity over everyone's skin. I felt it too. A thrill. Power I hadn't allowed myself to touch before. The day dragged, but each interaction was a calculated move. Malik tried to undermine me. But my eyes were sharp. My voice steady. I interjected with facts, evidence, quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't boast but leaves an impact. My hands didn't shake. My pulse was steady. Every sound, the click of keyboards, the hum of printers, the faint scent of someone's lunch, became part of my focus. Part of the battlefield. Lunch came, unnoticed. I stared out the window at the sprawling city, imagining the life I could carve beyond these walls. Sunlight warmed my face, a stark contrast to the fluorescent chill I endured that morning. It reminded me that the world outside didn't care about office politics, but how I reacted would define me. By afternoon, tides shifted. Whispers and subtle nods came from colleagues who had ignored me before. Small victories, yes, but each one mattered. Malik's smirk faltered twice. When the meeting ended, I walked out not just unscathed, but strengthened. Every breath reclaimed a piece of myself once doubted. Dismissed, almost erased. Back at my desk, I allowed a moment to exhale. I touched the notebook I'd kept close since last night, tracing the words I wrote. Rise. Arrive like a storm. It wasn't just a phrase anymore. It was reality. I could feel the shift in the air. Subtle but undeniable. I wasn't reacting. I was creating, conquering. Then came the call that would change everything. My phone rang. A ringtone cutting through the city hum like a warning bell. Emily, my mentor, the one I trusted to tell the truth even when it hurt. My stomach twisted, a mix of dread and anticipation. I need you to come in, she said, voice tight, urgent. It's about the Johnson project. The city outside seemed suspended. Hands trembling. I grabbed my coat. The air smelled faintly of last night's rain, damp, clean, grounding. The storm outside wasn't anything compared to the one inside me. At the office, fluorescent lights felt harsher, accusing. Emily met me in the lobby. Unreadable. She led me to a conference room I rarely entered. A few colleagues sat there, eyes darting nervously. Tension hung thick, a metallic tang in the air. Emily spoke first. We've been reviewing the Johnson project files. There's a lot at stake. And, we noticed something unusual in the reports you submitted. Unusual? My heart raced. My reports had been flawless, or so I thought. I braced myself. Then Emily smiled. Small, almost imperceptible. You caught it before anyone else did. That oversight by Malik. It could have cost us thousands. And you caught it. You saved the project. Shock, disbelief, relief. They collided inside me like a storm I hadn't expected. My hands clammy, yet a warmth crawled up my spine. Confidence, determination, vindication. I sat, numb. Emily placed a hand on my shoulder. This is your turning point, she said softly. You've been overlooked too long. Now, people are starting to see you. Every sound, the click of pens, the hum of the air conditioner, hallway chatter, seemed sharper. Sunlight fell across the table like patterns on a chessboard. This was a battlefield, and I had made my first real move. By afternoon, whispers became recognition. Colleagues nodded, smiled. Malik's confident smirk wavered, replaced by caution. For the first time, I realized, power isn't loud. It's precise, subtle, undeniable. Back at my desk, heart racing but calm, I pulled out my notebook. Rise. Arrive like a storm. It wasn't just a phrase. It was a promise. Never shrink back. Never be invisible. That evening, city lights flickering, I reflected. Every glance, every unspoken word, every subtle victory mattered. Strength isn't being fearless. It's facing fear, stepping into the moment, claiming your space. Emily called one last time. Don't let this be the end, she said. Use it. Grow. Keep moving. Her words lingered. A quiet revolution had started with one moment of recognition. I looked at my reflection in the window, framed by the warm city glow. Unshakable, untested, scarred, but unbroken, focused, fearless, ready. The storm wasn't over, it had only begun. Boardroom battles, whispers, subtle sabotages. They would meet someone awake. Someone who understood true power, patience, observation, courage. I closed my notebook, whispered, this is just the beginning. The world doesn't know what's coming. The office felt different the next morning. Charged, heavy, like the calm before a storm. I walked past glass walls, catching fragments of cinematic conversations, whispers, cautious laughter, shuffle of papers. My heart raced, not from fear, but anticipation. Something monumental was about to happen. I sat at my desk, staring at my screen, trying to focus, but my mind kept replaying yesterday. Emily's words, the subtle nods from colleagues, Malik's faltering confidence. They collided like pieces of a puzzle I hadn't fully assembled. Victory tasted sweet, but responsibility weighed heavier than ever. A sharp knock cut through the quiet. Malik, tense, smirk gone, stood there. We need to talk, he said, voice low. There was something in his eyes, a challenge, a threat, maybe respect. I gestured for him in. Pulse quickening. I could smell his faint cologne, cedar. Metallic, almost iron, grounding, real. You think yesterday was luck, he said, but you don't know what you're up against. I felt fire ignite again, not anger, not revenge, clarity. Leaning back, eyes locked on his, I said, I've learned more in a week than you realized. You won't underestimate me again. The office sounds, the phones, murmurs, the faint hum of printers, amplified the tension. Hands steady, chest thumping to the rhythm of a storm inside me. Hours passed in a blur of emails, meetings, subtle moves. I noticed details I had ignored before, the hesitation in his speech. Micro-expressions, whispered alliances forming in corners. Every observation sharpened my strategy. Every tiny victory stacked like bricks. By midday, I was exhausted but exhilarated. Malik's facade cracked further, and somewhere beneath the tension, I sensed recognition. He knew I was no longer the same. Lunch passed unnoticed. I stared out at the sprawling city. savoring mundane bites of salad like a secret luxury. The office smells, coffee, paper, faint stress, fueled me instead of draining me. The turning point came that afternoon. A project presentation, once Malik's territory, fell under my hands. I spoke with precision, calm, and quiet authority. Faces shifted, whispers stifled, then Emily's subtle nod, enough to make my chest swell. Back at my desk, I felt the energy of the room differently. No longer a battlefield where I feared erasure. It was a stage where my voice had weight. My choices mattered. Adrenaline lingered, sharp and invigorating. By the end of the day, Malik was no longer untouchable. I had carved space, demanded recognition, and in the quiet, I realized the truth. This victory wasn't about him. It was about me, standing ground, navigating chaos, emerging stronger and sharper. That evening, walking through Brooklyn streets bathed in sunset, I felt fatigue and triumph mingle. The city smelled of exhaust and rain-soaked streets. Alive, real, I breathed deeply. I was ready for the next chapter, the next storm, and in that moment, I vowed I would never shrink again. Not for anyone, not for anything. The next morning, a single call shifted everything. Emily's voice, calm but urgent. Meet me in the conference room. Now. Walking down the corridor, shoes echoing against polished floor. Coffee scent in the air grounding me. I felt anticipation buzz through every nerve. Emily, hands folded, eyes steady. I've been watching you. Time to make the move that matters. Her words hit like a shockwave. Adrenaline metallic on my tongue. The project, Malik's territory, the whispers, the alliances, it all aligned. By afternoon, in the project meeting, I entered calm, storm hidden inside. The projector clicked, lights dimmed. I spoke steady, deliberate, each slide a strategic move. Soft inhalations, shifting chairs, murmurs of surprise. The room was mine. Malik tried to interject, but I flowed around him. Grounded, precise. Then came the board's sharp question. I paused, smelled Emily's faint perfume lingering in my memory like armor. I answered with clarity, nuance, honesty, no room for dismissal. Respect replaced skepticism. Back at my desk, city blurred orange and pink outside. Fingers drummed a rhythm of triumph. I felt every texture, the rough notebook, cool pen, fading sunlight, real, alive, capable. Walking home, I realized the transformation wasn't external, not about winning projects or outmaneuvering Malik. It was trust in instincts, voice, integrity, strength. Each step on wet pavement echoed a promise. No shrinking. No fear dictating choices. The collision, chaos, doubts, they had all prepared me. Now I stood at the edge of something bigger, my own potential. That night, rain tapping the window, I held the agency letter, the final notice. Dreams painstakingly built, slipping away, old books, coffee scents, memories of late-night grind, hope and despair clashing in my chest. I sat trembling, hands shaking, chest aching, shame, fear, bitter taste of failure suffocating. And yet, deep inside, something stirred, a seed, a promise. Tomorrow, I would rise again, not to prove anyone wrong, but to honor the person I had become. And yet, amidst the chaos, a spark flickered. I remembered my first lesson in courage, the night I stepped into that tiny classroom in a foreign city. Faces unfamiliar, doubt pressing down, and still, I survived. Not flawless, not unscathed, but I survived. That memory lit a flame I hadn't realized still burned inside me. I stood, bare feet cold against the floor, grounding me. Storm outside, storm inside, but maybe storms weren't meant to destroy. Maybe they were meant to cleanse. I tore open the envelope again, fingers raw, letting each word sink in. A chance, slim, but it was a chance. And I wasn't done. I packed my bag with resolve. Every step to the bus stop felt heavy and light at once. Fear weighed. Hope buoyed. City lights blurred through rain-streaked windows, each droplet sparking something awake in me. I am not finished. Not today, I whispered. Mantra, heartbeat, fire, determination, possibility. The next morning, the sky pale, fragile, I gripped my coffee like a lifeline. Every sound, horns, distant laughter, Footsteps pressed in, reminding me of how small I'd felt. And then, the message. My phone vibrated sharp against my palm. Him, the one whose presence had once unspooled my world. Heart stuttered, raced, choice, answer, or let it rot in silence. I typed, paused, then opened the conversation. Just my name, Ellie. Nothing else. The blank space carried more weight than any sentence. Memories flooded, laughs, whispered dreams, quiet nights that felt ours alone. I could almost feel his hand in mine, making my apartment's chill bite sharper. I didn't reply right away. Let the vibration drum against my chest, a rhythm reminding me that the world had shifted. Rain mixed with the scent of old books. Grounding, yet pulling me deep into nostalgia. Absurd how ink and paper could trigger memory of touch. Smile, promise. I realized how much I'd clung to a past that wasn't mine. By afternoon, sun broke through, streaking the floor golden. Choices loomed large. Let him back in? Or close the door? Sever a piece of myself forever? Lines rehearsed in my mind. Echoes of conversations that might come. Apologies. Accusations. Laughter. Tears. The air hummed with possibilities. Then it hit me. Life doesn't wait. Doesn't pause for regret or readiness. The floor creaked as I paced. Metronome to urgency I could no longer deny. I had hidden in what-ifs too long. Now, the truth. I was ready. Evening found me at the cafe where we first met. Coffee and rain-slicked pavement. The scent forever tethered to choice and risk. Hands shook, but I opened the door. Eyes met his, older. Maybe wiser. Undeniably him. No cinematic fanfare. Just two lives colliding raw. Jagged. We didn't speak. Silence thick. Oddly comforting. Tension coiled in my stomach. Fluttered in my chest. I whispered. Hoarse. I didn't know if I'd ever see you again. That one sentence carried years of longing. Fear. Unanswered questions. He nodded. Thousand unspoken things. Regret. Hope. Forgiveness. No more words needed. Outside, the city moved relentlessly. But in that corner, time paused. Closure wasn't perfection. It was presence. Acknowledgement. Courage to face what had haunted me alone. Walking home later. Rain fresh on streets. I felt lightness. Fear hadn't vanished. Past lingered like a shadow. But hope took root. Resilience. Quiet. Growing. Like roots pushing through cracks in concrete. Just the beginning. Hallway smelled of old books. Wax polish. Steps echoed like taunts. Heart racing. Not from walking. But memory clinging like ivy. Morning after the shift. Coffee untouched. Heaviness pressing on my chest. Air thick. Traffic hummed. Distant laughter. Shoes clicking. The mundane now a stage. And I stepped into a scene unprepared for. Yet inevitable. Alex's words echoed. You don't have to do this alone. Fear of failure, of weakness. Threatened to suffocate. Hand trembled on the doorknob. Memories sharp, jagged, magnetic. Photos. Scattered notebook pages. A reminder of battles I'd fought to bury. Today, burying wasn't enough. I had to face it. First words hoarse. I need to say something. Silence held its breath. Then floodgates opened. Pain. Anger. Hope. Regret. Tears stung. Yet clarity pierced the chaos. It wasn't revenge. Not denial. It was recognition. My limits. My courage. My humanity. Every hesitation. Misstep. Small act of bravery led to this moment. The past became blueprint for the future. And in that recognition, I found the power I had feared to claim. By the time I finished, my voice had steadied, my chest still ached, but this time, it ached with a strange pride. The kind that burns slow and deep. Outside, sunlight shifted through the blinds, painting jagged stripes on the floor, like a promise waiting to be claimed. I knew I hadn't solved everything. The path ahead was still messy, unpredictable, but for the first time in a long while, I believed I could walk it without hiding. I stepped into the hallway, leaving the room behind, carrying something fragile but fierce, a spark that whispered, "There's more to tell, and I'm ready for it." The night air was damp, sweet with rain-soaked asphalt and the faint trace of cinnamon from the bakery 2 blocks over. I pulled my jacket tighter, though it wasn't the cold that made me shiver. It was the weight of weeks of decision-making, the knowledge that tonight could alter everything. The streets were quiet, broken only by the distant hum of cars. A lone honk, or laughter floating from a nearby apartment. My footsteps echoed against brick walls. Each tap a heartbeat reminding me I was alive, aware, untethered, fragile but unbroken. My mind raced, retracing conversations, glances, moments I'd misread. Now, the moment to act had arrived. I reached the park where we first met. The swings creaked gently in rhythm with my own pulse, though no one was there to push them. Damp grass smelled like memory itself. I could almost hear echoes of laughter. Months ago, when the world had felt simpler, choices smaller, how naive I had been. And then I saw him, Alex, sitting under the street lamp, shadows stretching across his face, eyes heavy with something I couldn't name. Recognition? Concern? Or had he always known more than he let on? "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said, voice low, calm, steady, the kind of voice that can both soothe and unsettle. I swallowed. I had to. I can't stay silent anymore. The words tumbled out faster than I could control, confessions, fears, regrets, hopes, pouring into the damp night. Muscles tensed, then relaxed, then tensed again, pain and relief intertwined, almost indistinguishable. He listened, really listened, no interruptions, no judgments, just presence. In that presence, I felt liberation. My voice steadied. For the first time in what felt like forever, I saw a path forward. Fragile, uncertain, but mine. "You've carried this alone for too long," Alex said finally, "but you don't have to anymore. Not tonight, not ever, not dramatic, not cinematic." But the weight of those words landed like a promise. Quiet but unshakable. I walked away later. Park behind me. The night had softened. Rain stopped. Streetlights shimmered on wet pavement. Life's hum continued, ordinary yet unstoppable. Inside me, fear, shame, relentless self-doubt, they weren't gone, but reframed. Evidence I had survived. Evidence I could survive the next storm. And then, the spark. Not victory, not solution, just a spark, enough to pull me forward. Enough to promise that the story wasn't over. That the next chapter held something more, something I couldn't name yet, but could already feel pulsing. Morning came slow, fingers of sunlight stretching through my bedroom window. Weight on my chest eased slightly. Countless nights curled on this same floor, staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering if light would ever reach me. And yet here I was. Apartment scented with coffee and old books. Glimpsing it, I realized how often I equated life with perfection. If I just did everything right, happiness would arrive. But happiness doesn't arrive neatly. It comes in bursts, fleeting glimpses, often wrapped in mistakes and pain. The broken moments I tried to avoid had shaped me all along. I thought of sleepless nights, forced smiles, mornings when leaving bed felt like lifting the world. Each memory, a lesson. Heartbreak taught resilience. Regret taught humility. Secrets buried deep taught honesty, first with myself, then the world. Lessons were not punishments, they were guides. I remembered Alex, not the conversations, but the act of listening. The rare, almost sacred ability to let someone speak without judgment, without rushing, without filling the silence. That listening held a quiet, unwavering love, and I realized I had held that love inside me all along, waiting for permission to acknowledge it. Coffee scent mingled with morning air as I opened the window. Breeze swept through, lifting remnants of restless night. Distant laughter, a bus rumbling, leaves rustling. The world went on. Indifferent, yet inside, a quiet power. To choose, to forgive, to continue even when the path ahead remained unclear. And I knew this. The story wasn't over. It never was. I was ready to face it, to write it, to live it. I closed my eyes and saw the younger version of myself, the one who trembled at every decision, who doubted every instinct, who feared shadows that weren't really there. I wanted to tell her, it's okay to stumble, it's okay to cry, it's okay to fear, but never forget that every step, even the missteps, is part of a journey that leads to understanding, empathy, and strength. I wished I could reach through time and place and wrap her in a warmth that would assure her everything would eventually make sense. The apartment was quiet, but alive. The hum of the refrigerator, the occasional drip of water from the faucet, the distant murmur of a train, all of it seemed amplified in the stillness. I realized then that life is not about avoiding mistakes or seeking approval. It's about presence, about being awake to the reality of your emotions, to the people around you, to the beauty in imperfection. Life's richest lessons are wrapped in struggle, fear, and uncertainty, and the moment I embraced that, I felt a shift, a subtle, undeniable shift. Hope. Hope wasn't a lightning bolt of clarity. It was a quiet acknowledgement that I could choose again, that I could forgive myself for what I had done, and begin offering that forgiveness outward. It was in the small, ordinary acts, making coffee, letting sunlight fall on my hands, opening an old notebook and scribbling thoughts I had kept hidden for years. Each choice was a seed, planting possibility for tomorrow. I thought of the mistakes I had made, the relationships that faltered, the words I had left unsaid. They weren't stains, they were textures, colors that gave depth and resonance to my story. Fear that once threatened to paralyze me became a compass, guiding me toward courage. Shame that had weighed me down became proof of my humanity. I felt it all, the weight, the ache, the sting, but for the first time, I felt unburdened. I wanted to tell the world, or anyone listening, that our struggles are our teachers. Our fears guides, our choices, big and small, define us. That we are allowed to feel deeply, love fully, speak our truth. Mistakes, regrets, shadows, they are not failures, they are seeds of transformation. Morning arrived softly, brushing gold across my walls. Outside, the city stirred. A neighbor slammed a door. A child's laughter floated from the street. A bus rumbled past. The world continued, indifferent yet unstoppable. And yet, within that chaos, I felt agency. I had the chance to act, to choose, to love, to forgive, to grow. This, I realized, is what makes life beautiful, even when messy, even when it hurts. I picked up my old notebook, dusted off the cover, and wrote. Words poured out, unstructured, messy, real. I wrote to remember, to honor lessons of both pain and joy, to leave a trail for anyone wandering in the dark, unsure if they could find their own light. And as I wrote, a fragile, tentative sense of completeness settled over me, a completeness that had eluded me for years. Here is the truth I now carry, the one I whisper to anyone willing to listen. Life is not about perfection. It is about presence, courage, empathy, and choice, about falling, rising, embracing the messy, glorious reality of being human. Our struggles are not weights, they are guides. Our fears are not enemies, they are teachers. Our choices paint the canvas of our lives. Every mistake, every regret, every heartbeat adds texture, depth, and color. I closed the notebook, letting sunlight flood the room. The city outside pulsed, alive. I felt ready, not for certainty, not for perfection, but for everything that was coming. I breathed deeply, coffee scent mingling with fresh air, and felt alive, whole, human, ready to truly live. Sitting there, I realized that life isn't measured by applause or milestones but by quiet moments, choosing honesty over comfort, empathy over judgment, courage over fear. In the small, unnoticed gestures, the hand you extend, the words you speak, the decision to forgive yourself, you find the ripple that shapes worlds. Growth doesn't strike like a storm, it creeps gently, imperceptibly, like sunlight through clouds after relentless rain. When we allow ourselves to fully feel both shadows and sparks of joy, we realize the struggles we feared most are the ones that teach love, resilience, and clarity. Life doesn't ask for perfection, it asks for presence. To show up, even when it's hard, even when fear grips tight. In showing up, embracing the messy work of being human, we discover strength, empathy, and a truth no mistake, regret, or fear can erase. Who we are at our core remains unshaken. Every step, every choice, every heartbeat matters. So I leave this here, not as an ending, but a reminder. Your story is yours to write. Your failures are not the final chapter. They are the ink giving depth. Your fears are not chains. They are compasses guiding toward courage. Your love, kindness, and willingness to face life fully, even in darkness, are gifts to yourself and to the world. And as I rose from the chair, notebook in hand, I smiled softly. Light spilled across the room. And in that ordinary, golden morning, I felt it. I was ready. Not for perfection, not for answers, but ready, finally, to live fully, fiercely, and unapologetically. The morning stretched lazily, soft sunlight spilling across the wooden floorboards, painting warm patterns on the walls. I lingered by the window, watching the city wake. Cars hummed, people hurried, dogs barked in the distance. Each ordinary sound felt amplified, a reminder that life moved on relentlessly, even if I sometimes wished it would pause, just for a moment, to catch my breath. I traced the edge of the window sill, feeling the cool wood beneath my fingers, grounding me. In that simple contact, I felt a tether to reality, to the present, a reassurance that I could exist here, now, fully awake. The notebook from last night lay open beside me, pages still marked with the ink of unburdening. But a quiet thought lingered. Writing alone would never be enough. Presence wasn't just observing myself, it was participating, living, stepping into the moments I had been too afraid to inhabit. The memory of Alex's words came back to me, lingering like a melody I couldn't shake. You don't have to carry this alone. I had spent so long hiding, so long measuring myself against fear, shame, and expectation. But maybe, I realized, the weight I had been carrying was never meant to crush me. It was meant to teach me how to bear, how to rise, how to offer the same support I had so long denied myself. I made coffee, the rich aroma curling around the kitchen like a protective shield. Steam rose from the mug, and I let my lips touch it, savoring the warmth as it seeped through me. I watched the sun climb higher, noting how the shadows shifted across the room, how the familiar furniture suddenly felt alive, as if acknowledging my awakening. Even the small things, the hum of the refrigerator, the soft creak of the floorboards, told a story, reminding me that the world wasn't waiting for me to be perfect. It simply was, and I could be part of it, as messy and flawed as I was. I thought of all the conversations I had avoided, the letters I had never sent, the apologies left unspoken. My heart ached at the memory. But there was a tenderness in that ache, a soft acknowledgement that the past had shaped me without defining me. I opened my phone and stared at the blank screen for a long while. Messages that once terrified me now seemed like invitations, opportunities to speak, to connect, to reconcile. It wasn't about being right, it was about showing up. Stepping outside, the air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of rain and distant bakery bread. The city seemed to hold its breath, every movement deliberate. I walked slowly, noticing the details I had often overlooked, the way the light hit the leaves on the trees, the rhythm of footsteps beside mine, the laughter spilling from a cafe. Each observation was a tether to life, a reminder that being present meant noticing, feeling, embracing. I passed the little park where I had met Alex. The swings creaked gently in the breeze, and for a moment, I allowed myself to imagine the laughter that had once filled that space. The memories were no longer chains, they were echoes, guides leading me toward understanding. I sat on the bench, letting the cold wood press against my palms, feeling grounded. For the first time, I didn't need to escape my past to move forward. I could acknowledge it, breathe with it, and let it inform my choices. My thoughts wandered to my younger self, the trembling girl who had feared shadows, who had doubted her every instinct. I whispered to her softly, "You've survived every storm so far. You will survive the next." The wind carried the words away, but I felt them settle inside me, like seeds taking root in fertile soil. Strength, I realized, wasn't born in triumph, it was born in endurance. In the quiet, repeated acts of resilience that no one witnessed. The afternoon arrived slowly, diffused sunlight casting long patterns on the sidewalks. I found myself wandering toward familiar streets, allowing the city to guide me rather than rushing toward a goal. Each step was deliberate, a meditation in motion. I noticed people. A mother tying her child's shoelaces. A man offering his umbrella to a stranger. A couple sharing a laugh on a bench. Life unfolded in these small moments, and I understood that participating in it fully meant being attentive, compassionate, and present. Later, I returned to my apartment and wrote again. This time with intention. Each word a thread weaving my fragmented experiences into coherence. I didn't seek closure or perfection, I sought honesty. My hand moved across the page, capturing the texture of fear, the warmth of hope, the subtle strength that had grown from pain. The apartment smelled faintly of coffee and paper. Comforting in its familiarity, I felt my chest rise and fall, steady and strong, a metronome affirming that I was alive, awake, capable. Evening arrived with a soft violet hue stretching across the horizon. I stepped onto the balcony, letting the city lights shimmer below. Somewhere, a distant laugh rang clear, the faint hum of traffic accompanied by a subtle breeze. I breathed deeply, savoring the sense of unshakable presence. I realized that courage wasn't always dramatic. It wasn't always a declaration. Sometimes, it was simply showing up, to your own life, to your own story, to the world as it unfolded before you. I thought about relationships I had nurtured and those I had let fade. I understood that connection wasn't about perfection or timing, it was about attention, care, and vulnerability. I resolved to listen more, to speak when it mattered, and to embrace both the joy and pain of being seen. The spark Alex had reminded me of, the quiet, unwavering presence, was now something I carried within myself, ready to extend outward. Night fell fully, wrapping the city in darkness softened by streetlights and the distant glow of apartment windows. I stayed on the balcony, watching stars faintly emerge, each a reminder that the universe continued regardless of my fears. And yet, I felt a profound clarity. The world could move on. Indifferent, relentless, but I could choose my movement within it. I could step, falter, rise, and continue, fully human, fully awake, fully alive. By the time I returned to my desk, notebook in hand, I realized that life isn't measured in milestones, applause, or perfection. It's measured in the quiet choices we make when no one is watching, to forgive, to listen, to embrace presence, to act with courage. I wrote with that awareness. Every word deliberate, every thought a bridge between what had been and what could be. And as the pen finally stilled, I leaned back, letting the city hum below me. I felt the pulse of life within me, steady and sure. I had walked through fear, through regret, through uncertainty, and emerged not unscathed, but unbroken. The spark that had flickered so faintly within me now glowed, ready to guide me toward the chapters I had yet to write. The night was quiet, but alive, and so was I, whole, human, and ready to face the messy, unpredictable, beautiful unfolding of life itself. As the first light of dawn filtered through the curtains, I sat quietly in my apartment, the notebook open before me, pages filled with the raw, unfiltered truth of my journey. I realized something profound. Life isn't about avoiding fear, chasing perfection, or seeking approval. Life is about showing up, fully, messily, bravely, for ourselves and for the people around us. It's about embracing the discomfort, learning from mistakes, and moving forward anyway. I thought about every moment that had shaped me, the setbacks, the heartbreaks, the quiet victories no one noticed. Each one had taught me something vital. Resilience isn't born in comfort. Strength isn't forged in ease. And happiness isn't a destination, it's the awareness that even in uncertainty, we have the power to act, to connect, to grow. I closed my notebook, feeling the weight of the past lighten, replaced by a calm clarity. I understood now that the scars, the doubts, the moments of fear, they weren't weaknesses. They were evidence that I had lived, that I had cared, and that I was capable of being present in my own life. The spark within me, once fragile and hidden, had grown into a quiet flame, steady and unwavering, ready to illuminate the path ahead. And here's the truth I want to leave with anyone listening: your journey matters. Every fear you face, every mistake you make, every time you rise after falling, it all counts. Don't wait for permission to be brave. Don't wait for the storm to pass. Step into the chaos, lean into your discomfort, and trust yourself, because strength, courage, and clarity are not given, they're discovered, one choice at a time. So take a moment today. Breathe, reflect, write down your thoughts, speak your truth, connect with someone you've been avoiding, or take that small step you've been postponing. Life will never be perfect, but it can always be meaningful. And in that meaning, you'll find the resilience you've been searching for all along. If this story resonated with you, I invite you to pause and reflect on your own journey. Share your thoughts in the comments. What fear have you faced recently? And how did it change you? Like this video if it inspired you to embrace your struggles. And don't forget to subscribe, because we all deserve reminders that even in the messy, unpredictable chapters of life, we can find strength, presence, and hope. Remember, your story isn't over. The spark is already inside you. Now it's time to let it grow.